Joining the league at lightning speed, this is your look at the DC Collectibles Justice League figure number 7, The Flash. Finishing up the last of the Justice League figures I was able to find in my local comic book store, we'll be looking now at the fastest man alive, The Flash. Questionable, of course, if you have him pitted against Superman, but I digress. Taking the tape measure to the very top of Flash's head and stopping the tape measure right there, you're looking at the figure standing 6.3 inches in height. And switching that to centimeters, then you're looking at the figure standing 16 centimeters exactly. Like we've done with the other figures, let's bring in some size comparisons. We'll bring in Batman. Some difficulty standing him. Bring in Superman. Yes, some difficulty standing him. Let's just correct his feet. There we go. You know, there is a saying when you buy a brand new car, the moment you drive it off the lot, it already depreciates in value. I sort of feel the exact same way when it comes to these DC collectible figures. Yeah, they were good looking at them in the box, but they have progressively depreciated in value, I feel, the moment I've gotten them home and taken them out of the packaging. There is Wonder Woman as well. Sort of a mixed bag. I'm still on the fence of how I actually feel about these figures. They have pros. I'm not going to completely list all the negatives without actually throwing some positives in there as well. While there is, I think, something to work with, there's definitely still a long way to go before these are perfect likenesses and perfect figures based on the original Justice League cartoon. I suppose it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Flash doesn't come with any accessories. No surprise whatsoever. Doesn't come with a display stand either. And just actually going back to something I was talking about when we had a look at the Wonder Woman, I mentioned that I wish she had peg holes on the undersides of her feet. Ironically enough, going back to it, Batman really was the only figure so far that actually has peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Just in case you didn't actually believe me, if you look at the underside of Superman's feet, which I might have even addressed in that review, Superman had no peg holes on the undersides of his feet either. So really, again, when you look at Flash, he doesn't have any. I don't know why specifically Batman had got granted the fact that he was able to get some extra peg holes on the undersides of his feet, and then all the other figures, not so much. Doesn't make any sense to me. Not unless they actually reused Batman's feet from a previous released Batman. And then along for that, they just inherited the fact that there was peg holes there to start off with. But yeah, every other figure, unfortunately, for this Justice League release line has little to no accessories. Well, no accessories to speak of, and no peg holes on the undersides of his feet, like all the other figures. So you can't even put them in display stands if you wanted to. They just don't have the holes there. I mean, yes, you probably can put a hole in the underside of his feet, but who wants to make a mess like that? I certainly don't. I hope that you don't either. Anyways, though, despite the fact that this one doesn't come with any accessories to speak of, I guess I sort of can dismiss the fact Flash doesn't come with any accessories. I mean, really, what would you throw in there? We've talked on the past about the fact that they could easily have thrown in episode-specific accessories, but I sort of, again, feel like when it came to this particular lineup of figures, DC Collectibles just sort of wanted to throw the figures out. They didn't want to add anything else above and beyond that. They didn't really want to give much consideration to what specifically these figures could come included with. They just didn't want to throw any accessories to speak of. Yet again, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Flash's hand is gripping. He's teasing you again, much like all the other figures have, with something that they could have put inside his hand. Unfortunately, Flash again comes with a big old goose egg. I want to talk a little bit about Flash's head. I sort of feel I'm on the fence about whether I like it or I dislike it. And you guys can weigh in down below in the comments section. The head sculpt, I'll give to the credit of DC Collectibles. They at least gave him an expression, so it's not just a neutral head sculpt. I mean, every other figure that we've looked at up to this point have had a very monotone, very neutral expression with very little expression to speak of. Flash at least gets a smile, and that's something. I'll give them points for that. But I don't know how I like the expression at all. I mean, the smile is almost even too exaggerated for even a cartoon version of Flash. It stretches way past the point of what I think a smile should be. I mean, it obviously goes a little higher on the one side than it does on the other, but I think it's almost just too much of a smile. I also feel like the smile is a little too high in the figure. I feel like it should be a little bit lower. This is, of course, all the things that I'm stating is my own personal opinions. If you have these figures for yourself and you like the head sculpt, congratulations. You like the head sculpt, I'm just not really a big fan of it. I mean, as for the lightning bolts, again, this is something where getting out of the packaging probably went a little bit up to the deforming of the way that the lightning is. At least I will say that the lightning is made of soft plastic, so you're less likely to break it. Unfortunately, I've had many a times in the past with DC Collectible, DC Direct releases of Flash, where they've used more of a denser plastic, and instantly it seems those lightning bolts tend to break off as soon as you get them out of the packaging. At the very least, if all I really have to be dealing with is just a slightly more warped lightning bolt, at least that is, I think that's a pretty small problem to have. Paint is okay. I have a little bit of an imperfection there where the lightning bolt attaches to the side of his face, or the side of his mask there. Paint on the eyes is somewhat clean. There's a little bit of the red that's carried down for it. Again, I want to stress the fact that that is a figure-to-figure specific issue. You may have a much cleaner eye on your Flash. I'm just pointing it out here, and specifically on the one that I have. Something else I want to also point out is, this is something I jokingly said when we had a look at Wonder Woman. If you look at the plastic again that they've used from one figure to the other, at least for their skin, it seems the color of plastic changes every single time. So there's the Flash, there's Wonder Woman. They're both very close in color scheme, although I would say Wonder Woman's looks a little more natural than Flash's rather shiny plastic that they used for his face. Then I'm also going to just hold on to these figures, because of course I only have two hands, at least that I checked last. We'll also bring in Batman. Batman had a much more pinker color scheme to his plastic, and while still holding on to the other three figures, I could bring in Superman. It literally looks like every single figure has its own unique color of plastic. Why? I don't know why at all they have to have different plastic colors for their flesh for each individual figure. Why they couldn't have kept the same color scheme. Now it makes me sort of second guessing myself. Would I have to go back and watch the original episodes of Justice League? Sign me up for that. Maybe they did have different colors of skin. I don't know. But it seems to me, I would think, they would all have the same coloring of plastic. And yet, ironically, looking at all of them, now you can see it. The proof is in the pudding. All of the figures have different plastic for their skin. I think if anything, again, going back to Wonder Woman, the only thing that I could praise her for is the plastic that they used for the skin color. I think it should have been the same plastic color that they should have used for all the other figures as well. Anyways, we'll just move those to the side. Just an interesting little quirk I noticed when I was looking at these figures. I was thinking, what are the chances that Flash has yet another different skin tone than all the other figures? And then sure enough, he did. You know, going back to, again, his head sculpt, you know how I mentioned I didn't really like his smile? And again, it's one of those cases where, like Wonder Woman, I feel almost the portrait works better from the side. The side looks a little bit more closer like his cartoon counterparts. Don't you agree? And yet on the front, it throws it off. Something's not quite jiving about this area of his head sculpt. Anyways, though, for the rest of his body, he's got the more reddish color, but this is a more softer red. It's actually very similar of a red to the Mattel release of Flash that we had gotten several decades ago, long time ago when those figures were first coming out. I still wish I had those figures. So I literally could have just out of nowhere popped up the Flash. Didn't mean to surprise you on this side. And I could have actually done a like-to-like, comparison-to-comparison, apple-to-apple version comparison of Flash. But I think the costume is very similar in coloring to the one that we got from Mattel before. This one's interesting because at least it does have the emblem that's raised. In fact, actually, all the areas on Flash's costume is raised. The lightning's on the sides of his arms. The lightning that's on the, making up the Flash belt there is all raised plastic. So at least they didn't just simply paint it in place. The yellow also down at the boot area is somewhat close. Although if you look at the boots and then you look at the lightning bolts, in fact, let me see if I can actually put both in frame. The lightning bolt color is the same as the coloring of his boots, and yet it seems like it's slightly not quite the same yellow that they used then for this, and this. And I know this isn't the plastic, at least not that I think at least. I'm guessing that this is probably just painted over, and this is the main base color that they used instead. They just painted the boots yellow. So again, it's always the case where yellow, they never can quite match yellows. This yellow matches, but the yellow doesn't match down here. It's a much warmer yellow that they use down below. Looking at the poseability on Flash, his head sits on a ball joint. Although one thing I have noticed as I rotate the head around, it's prone, I find at least, to popping off. I sort of have to do it really, really slowly. If I do it abruptly, it seems to almost twist itself off the ball joint. You sort of can see what we're working with underneath there. The ball joint sits quite strangely low on the neck. Maybe that's the problem. There's not nearly enough of it sitting inside the socket of the head. But every time I rotate the head, at least again, if I do it too quickly, the head just seems to literally twist itself off the ball joint. So you want to be careful of that. The head tilts down. The head tilts somewhat up. But again, as you're doing that, very, very prone again to popping off. So I want to be careful of that. The shoulders hinge out. Not quite at a full 90-degree angle bend. Maybe I would gauge that at, what, 80? I'm not really good when it comes to degrees. I know when I have to put on a jacket, that's a different type of degrees. But that's basically what you get for the full stretch of his arm. It also does allow you to rotate the arm around. Notably, I have to say, I got a bit of the dinner bell thing going on for their arms, this specifically on Flash. Both the shoulder joint arm, socket joint right there, and then the elbow joint are both equally loose on Flash. I mean, I don't know if you can see it or not, but yeah, it's a bit loose, unfortunately. I literally have had Flash out of the packaging. I want to say, usually on average, when it comes to reviewing these figures, I may take the figure out of the packaging and then sort of just play around with them for a couple of hours before I hit record. So I've only had them out of the packaging for a few hours, just a few hours. And right out of the packaging, I've already noticed that the arm was loose. I mean, it wasn't just out of extensive play, because I don't really do extensive playing with these figures, just loose already. And that makes me sad. Arms rotate all the way, or the hands rotate all the way around. There's the hinge joint right there, so you can see how the hand hinges up and hinges down. Again, just really loose and floppy. No waist articulation because basically the torso is molded right to the lower half of his body. But then you can again see very small trunks. They don't really want to exaggerate the trunk size apparently on these figures. Legs split out, and you get almost a full splits happening on Flash. Not quite, almost a full splits. The legs go forward, the legs go back. Again, a little loose on the lower leg areas. And then you also have the single hinge on the knee, little bit of articulation there in the boot area, and then he also has articulation in the feet. I don't have as much of the issue when it comes to Flash standing as perhaps some of the other figures. It sort of works to his favor that he has a very small body and large enough feet. Let's just get him centered. There we go. He has large enough feet that sort of allows him to properly keep himself balanced. Despite that, though, I don't feel it's a balanced figure in a literal, not literal, but figurative sense. In that, because I don't think that there's things that work well. There's things that work against these specific figures. And again, like I had said at the beginning of the review, where buying a car, the value of the car depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot. I feel like, again, this line is depreciating the more and more I'm looking at these figures. Again, we can sort of run down the problems with these figures. They have no accessories. They have no display stands. They're generally loose on arrival. And in some cases, the sculpting is way off. Flash gets a pass, at least for me. He's more in the territory, I feel, of Batman than he is in the territory of Wonder Woman, who still remains for me the worst figure of the batch. This is a line so far for me where I'm sort of thinking I wish another company could swoop down, scoop up the licensing, and be able to produce their own figures. Sort of like what Super 7 has done with the Thundercats, giving us episode-specific accessories. I'd like to see somebody do the exact same treatment for the Justice League line as well. But unfortunately, it boils down to licensing. Licensing right now is shared between Spin Master doing the kids' release toys of DC. McFarlane, of course, is helming the majority of it with the DC Multiverse. That doesn't probably leave much left for any other company to be able to pick up and run with. McFarlane has done, yes, some animated series figures, and I'm sort of still on the fence of whether I actually like those or not. Having just recently looked at the blue costume version of the animated series Batman, I actually kind of like that figure. But he doesn't have episode-specific accessories, nor does Flash here, nor does any one of the Justice League figures that we've looked at so far from DC Collectibles. And again, that's why I feel another company should be running with this. DC Collectibles is still doing somewhat the remaining end of their animated series treatments. So there are those yellow-carded figures that I'd like to pick up at some point and be able to have a look at them, add them to my collection. But for the time being, it doesn't seem like they're going to be doing much of anything else after that. So the chances of getting these figures coming back at some state with maybe some additional accessories are probably quite slim to none. So what we're getting is this, the bare basics, the bare bones Justice League. And sort of, again, I feel like they're an upgrade to the Mattel line, but they're far, far away from actually being the definitive cartoon line of Justice League. Again, I really think that some other company should be doing this. Because what I'm seeing so far from DC Collectibles, I just feel like they didn't want to throw too much into this line. It sort of was, we're only going to do the League, and that's all we're going to do. Episode-specific accessories, or heck, even display stands. We're not going to do that. You're just getting the figures. Let me know down below, though, what you guys think of these figures. I think, again, I feel like Batman is the best. Maybe then Flash, maybe then Superman. Distant fourth is Wonder Woman. Let me know down below in the comments section though what you guys think of it. I always love reading your comments. And if you are new to the channel and you're liking the content you're seeing, consider the idea of hitting that subscribe button down below, turning that friendly notification bell on just as a friendly reminder so that when new videos are coming up to this channel on Mondays to Fridays at 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll get those friendly reminders. Stay tuned because there's definitely going to be a lot of stuff coming your way, even though we are wrapping up Justice League for the time being. As you can probably see on the back of the box, you can't really see it right now, unless you have X-ray vision. There's still a few figures that obviously are still coming out, like the Hawkgirl, the Martian Manhunter, the John Stewart. So there's still a chance and opportunity for me to have a look at those remaining figures. So keep your peepers peeled to this channel for more videos. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do, and I'll see you guys next time.